Good morning, everybody. I make it 10 o'clock, so welcome to this month's meeting of the Corporate Governance Committee. Starting with item 1, minutes of the last meeting. I propose that the minutes of the last meeting held on the 24th of November are taken as read, confirmed, signed. Is that agreed? Against? No. Thank you very much. Questions? There are no questions from the public. Questions from members? I understand there are no questions from members either. And no urgent items, so we're on to declarations of interest. Any members have any declarations they wish to make? Excellent. So item 6, presentation of petitions. There are none. So we move straight on to the external audit of the statement of accounts. And I'll move on to ask Simone to present the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. So good morning, everyone. And this is a short report, and it is in the addendum pack. So it was a supplementary report sent out after the main agenda, and it provides an update on the external audit of the council's accounts and the pension fund accounts as well, and is a further update following the update we brought to committee in November, where we did present the accounts. At that point, the audit was mostly complete, but there were just a couple of areas outstanding that we were still working through. Those remaining areas have now been completed, and the auditor is planning to sign the accounts on the 29th of January, so that's next Thursday, and that will have an unmodified opinion, which is what we are aiming for. So of those final queries that we were still working through from November, there were some adjustments that we were required to make to the accounts. They are all kind of technical accounting treatment adjustments, and there is nothing that kind of affects the overall kind of balance sheet values or the council's financial position. They are described in, I think it's paragraph 10 of the report, and they're also in slides, I think it's 42 to 44 of the attached audit findings report as well, where you can see the auditor's view of those. But just briefly, there are two grants that we have had to amend the accounting treatment for, the social care grant and the Better Care Fund. So again, there is no change to kind of net expenditure, it's just how we've had to show the grant in the accounts. We've then also had to change the way that we have treated the pooled property and pooled infrastructure investments in the accounts. And that's following a review of the accounting treatment by the external auditor, where it's been determined that those that spend should be accounted for as revenue instead of capital, basically. So we've had to do an accounting adjustment to reflect that. But again, that amendment is simply a technical adjustment that moves the financing of that spend between the capital adjustment account and revenue reserves. But again, there is no overall impact on kind of council's overall financial position. But there is some more information on that in the covering report. We then also had to do an adjustment around how we treated derecognition of assets that got an ill carrying value. But again, no kind of impact on balance sheet values there. And then finally, there was one item in respect to the valuation of County Hall, actually, which we haven't adjusted for because it was immaterial, but it was an undervaluation of County Hall. It was £1 million and materiality is 20 million, so it was way sort of under materiality, so we haven't adjusted for that, but the letter of representation does confirm that we haven't adjusted for that item. So you have got a final copy of the statement of accounts at Appendix A, and a final copy of the audit findings report, which is Grant Thornton's report, at Appendix B. The audit fee is also unchanged from the audit plan. And the committee is asked to note the updated AFR and also the signing of the letter of rep ahead of that final signing next week. We do have Helen Lillington from Grant Thornton. If there are any questions related to the external audit, but I shall leave it there, but happy to take any questions, as is Jason as well.
Thank you very much for that. Are there any questions from members? No? Excellent. I'll let politely on that one, sorry. So can I ask that the recommendations are agreed? Those in favour? Any against? No, that's carried. Thank you very much. Move on then to the Treasury Management Strategy. Jason.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. So this is the annual Treasury Management Strategy Statement. We abbreviate it to the TMS. This report starts on page 13 of the pack, of the main pack for today. So this is the framework under which the Treasury management activity of the County Council is undertaken. The statement is attached as an appendix to the report and includes the policy around the minimum revenue provision and the prudential indicators. There are no significant changes proposed in this version to the 25-26 version. The statement will be considered by full council as part of the MTFS at its meeting on the 18th of February. So just turning to the report, there's a lot of information in the statement that was attached as Appendix A. So I don't propose going through all that detail, but just to summarise, it begins on page 19 of your packs and initially provides the introduction and the current economic climate. Treasury management strategy on page 23 sets out the key considerations, reporting and training requirements, details of the council's treasury management advisors and consultants, the capital financing requirement, minimum revenue provision, prudential and treasury indicators, and the council's approach to any borrowing that may be required. The statement also includes the annual investment strategy, and that starts on page 32. That sets out the investment policy and the management of risk, the credit worthiness policy, limits that we have with counterparties and countries, the environmental, social and governance considerations, the scheme of delegation and the role of the Section 151 officer. There are then a further number of annexes to the statement. So we've got Annex 1, which is the minimum revenue provision statement itself. Annex 2 is the prudential and treasury indicators that are used to assess treasury management activity over the year. And Annex 3 is the policy on approved organisations for lending. And then finally, Annex 4 is the treasury management policy statement. So the committee are asked to comment on the report and the appendix. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, and thank you for the report. Are there any questions from the committee? No, again, that's great then. So we move on to the recommendations, which is to note the report and recommend the council approves it. I'm happy to move it. Is there a seconder? Joel, thank you very much. All in favour? Any against? Again, that is unanimous. Thank you very much. And we're back on to Jason again for the next report.
Okay, thank you. So that previous report was the strategy, and then what we do once the strategy is in place, then we do quarterly reporting. So this is the Q3 report for the current year of 25-26, and this starts on page 47 of the agenda pack. So just going through the report, paragraphs 2 to 4, they set out the committee's responsibilities, and the committee has delegated the responsibility to ensure that the arrangements are appropriate and regularly monitored and are consistent with the annual treasury management strategy and investment strategy that was approved by County Council in February last year. The report then goes on to paragraphs 5 to 7 that defines treasury management and outlines the process for ensuring funds are managed in line with the strategy, and that it operates within the framework of CITFA's Treasury Management Code of Practice. It's important to note that capital investments, they're separate to treasury investments, and those are managed through the Investing in Leicestershire programme, and that's covered by the capital strategy rather than the treasury management strategy, and monitored through reports to the Scrutiny Commission and the Cabinet. So just moving on then, so paragraph 8 sets out the economic update. So this is for the last quarter, and that's provided by our Treasury Management Advisors, MUFG, Pension and Market Services. And the key points from their last update are outlined in paragraphs 8 and 9. So, particular note is inflation still remains higher than the Bank of England's 2% target. And as a result, I'm following the further cut in base rate to 3.75 in December. It's now unlikely that there'll be any further cuts to the base rate before probably summer of next year. It's the current estimate. So base rate is now down to 3.75 in December. The table in paragraph 10, sorry, it's a little bit further, paragraph 14, that shows the position on the short-term investments, so those up to 12 months. During the period, the total amount invested decreased from 395 to 346 million. 136 million the investments matured, with 86 million of new investments going out at an average percentage rate of 4.05%. That was a fall on the previous quarter from 4.13, and that reflected the trajectory of base rates, of interest rates reducing. The weighted average of the loans that are held has increased slightly from 165 days to 167. It's quite similar, but it just reflects that we've got more longer term investments in short. And that's helpful in a market with falling interest rates. The table in paragraph 14 shows the breakdown of the investments held at the end of the quarter. And that shows 346 million in short-term investments and 57 million in long-term investments. Further information on the breakdown of the short-term investments by sovereignty and institutional credit rating is shown in the diagrams, graph 15. And you'll see the majority of the investments sit within the top credit rating classes. Moving on, in paragraph 17 shows the average APR for the short-term investments has decreased from 0.27% to 4.19% during the quarter. Again, it's driven by the rates that are available on new loans being lower than those that were in place for maturing loans. Paragraphs 18 to 25, they summarise the council's longer-term investments, so those that mature greater than 12 months from their original investment date. So this includes private debt, the bank risk share funds, and it also now includes pooled property and pooled infrastructure funds. So these asset classes act as diversifiers for the Investing in Leicestershire programme. However, their treasury management investments in nature and as such are covered in this policy. Moving on to paragraph 28, the resource implications. So treasury management interest that is earned on the investments is quite significant and amounts to 16.5 million for the year. That's £4.5 million more than we budgeted for. And that was due to market expectations of when base rates would fall. They've actually stayed higher for longer in the early part of the year. When we set the budget back in November 24, it would have been now, the current year. So that's all I wanted to say, and just ask the committee to note the report and to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Jason. Are there any questions or comments at this stage?
Just say it's
Just return to you so people can hear you.
thank you very much, Chair. Just say it seems very good returns that we've had over the past year. Interest rates staying higher, which is a positive for us. Is there with LGR looming as well? Is there something that we need to look at to see the investments that we're going to potentially do a longer term to rein them in to match up with potentially what might happen with when the new authorities come in? Is that come into your thinking yet?
Probably not at the moment, because we don't know the outcome of what will happen. But yeah, a lot of the short term, they're all within 12 months, so they can be managed. The longer term ones be a bit more difficult, but they can be called early if they needed to. If we had to split them, for instance, disaggregation. But hopefully we'll have plenty of notice in which to manage that position.
So just on that, when LGR, if it does or doesn't happen, all the assets and liabilities of the organisations do go into the new organisation. So there isn't an actual sort of a need to end any or sort of manage those sort of loans early. It's purely only going to be that sort of cash flow management. So if that helps, it is one less task that we'd have to do. So you don't necessarily need to sort of terminate everything for them to be set up new. Those contracts will naturally innovate.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? No. So again, recommendation is to note the report. I will move it. Do I have a seconder? Again, Jill, thank you very much. Those in favour? Any against? Again, that is unanimous. Thank you very much. Right, we're motoring through today. So next item is the risk management update. I'll ask to be able to kick off, and I think we've got a presentation as well.
Thanks, Chair. Good morning, members. Chair, we would normally start with our presentation, but I think we're a little bit ahead of schedule. So shall I take the paper first and then give Colin time to...
Yes, that'd be great.
Okay. So good morning, everyone. This is an annual paper which I bring to the committee around this time, and it's the risk management report which covers the annual review and revisions to related strategies and policies, and also a brief update on our management of property and occupant risk. So the paragraph 5 just explains that we don't bring normally the normal corporate risk register to this committee unless there are any significant changes to risks. And just to give you assurances, I did get from managers that there weren't any significant changes. So we're just focusing on the policies and strategies. Paragraph 7 explains the committee's constitutional responsibilities in terms of approving the policies before they go on to the MTFS. Paragraph 9 for the risk management policy strategy, I've explained a few of the key changes in there. Not going to dwell on them, there weren't too many this year, but I was going to just refer to paragraph 8, point C, which is page 8, and unfortunately Mr. Page isn't here today. I was just going to give him some assurance that we would move forward from November when he asked the question about trying to decouple risks and issues. So that is in hand now. Paragraph 10 refers to the insurance policy. Very few changes on this, just one minor change in terms of the limits. And then I have put some explanations in some of the technical jargon that's used in there. So I think I've mentioned both of those documents will be submitted to the MTFS, which is going to Cabinet in February, and County Council later on. The final part of the report relates, both of those appendices are in Appendix A and Appendix B, and I'll take questions on those if people have any questions. The final part of the report relates to the work of a group that's been set up a few years back now to specifically manage property and occupants risk. And a brief summary of the work that was undertaken last year and what is planned for 2026 is contained in Appendix C. So that's all I have to say on the report. I'd gladly take any questions on any of the appendices.
Yes, thank you, Gordon.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thanks, Neil. Looking at page 80 in the pack, risk management roles and responsibilities and the structure, and that is amplified further at page 85. That talks about the role. Let me just get onto page 85. That talks about the leadership roles of cabinet lead members, chief officers, and then it goes on to talk about the corporate governance committee. My point around that, or my question around it is, there's been a considerable amount of change over the past period in respect to the cabinet, the lead members, and indeed chief officers as well, where 2 out of the 3 statutory roles, officer roles, have actually changed. Looking at the corporate governance committee, that has changed as well in terms of I'm the only person left from the committee as it was constituted last year. The question around that is, does that in itself present risks around this? That because it talks very much about cabinet understanding key risks, lead members' responsibility, chief officers, their responsibility, and indeed this committee's responsibility. So I wonder if any work's been done around identifying the risks around that. And secondly, what sort of mitigations are put in place, training, etc., just to give the committee, shall we say, an assurance around that, because this is fairly key, isn't it, to identification of risks and understanding of risk as well.
Yeah, I think the simple answer is yeah. I mean, an organisation that's had stability for a long period of time, and then to have a lot of change, it creates a lot of risk, and not just at the political level, but at the officer level. So the mitigations come in from identifying the change, and then, as you say, training and providing information to the people who need it. So what deep in here is a requirement of chief officers to brief their lead members on the risks that are relevant to their portfolio. That happens on a regular basis. I check up on that anyway. And then obviously the what's not in here, you wouldn't see, but in the chief executive's risk register, its own department risk register, there was a clear requirement to make that as a risk when the chief officer, the known risk around the chief executive and the monitoring officer leaving, and how that was going to be mitigated. So I guess I'm giving you verbal assurances now to the question you're asking that it happens in terms of what I see throughout the organisation. Did either of you want to add anything to that?
I think, sorry, go on.
Sorry, I was just going to add to that in terms. I mean, he was absolutely right in what he's covered there. But there's also kind of post-election, there was a more formal induction process and training that supported committees and some of those sort of individual cabinet members as well, and that will be an ongoing process.
I think, yeah, thank you for raising that, Gordon. I think it's a very important point. I just to reassure you, I've been on and off this committee over the years, so I'm not completely new to it. And I guess that is just the nature of democracy. And there's only one thing worse than democracy, and that's no democracy or not having democracy. There's plenty of places around the world, I'll tell you. And I just want to echo the point that Simone made. I sat on before the elections, the member group that looked at training and induction, and I think the training induction programme has been excellent. I hope others agree. And if not, if there are gaps there that people have seen since the election, please talk to your group whips or your representatives on the new committee that is the member development committee, and I'm sure that we can look to improve that for the future. But thank you very much for that. Any further comments on the report? I will deal with the report first before we have the presentation, I think. Any further comments on the report? No. So the report, I'll move the recommendations. Secondly, Jill. Yeah. Those in favour? Excellent. Thank you very much. And now we welcome Colin, who's going to give us a presentation on AI.
Just join the meeting. So I can share the screen. A second. Sorry about this. Good morning, my name is Colin Lynch. I'm the Data Protection Officer for Leicestershire County Council. I'm here to give you a brief presentation on artificial intelligence. It's coming up. Sorry, for some reason the presentation not loading very quickly, so it's blocking me, is it? You don't mind. I'll start by saying we have done a lot of work on AI over the last 2 or 3 years. As you know, it's become a very, very big aspect of IT, a big aspect of working practices. There's potential lots of benefits, but be also mindful of the risks which this can deliver as well. So, could I have the next slide, please? Stopping me going to my own slides now. As a quick overview, it is now pretty much widespread. We were saying about 1.5 years ago, AI is already here. It's welcomed by many people. Some nations have sort of blocked it more than others, but it's a part of everyday life now. You're seeing it on commercials and everything else. There's applications which are now saying that they're AI, and we're struggling to find out whether they are or not, and what aspect of AI is this. Government itself are welcoming it. There's potential growth in there, potential efficiency drives, and the Information Commissioner's Office are also supportive of artificial intelligence. But and this is a big but. It must be used responsibly. A quick definition, what I always say, it's AI is something which should be behaving like a human, making decisions and learning as it goes, as a human being would do as well. There are many benefits, cost reduction being probably the most predominant one. Consistency, if you use AI, at least you'll get the same answer or should get the same answer rather than asking 2 or 3 different people. It should deliver better service. I think organisations which don't use it or refuse to use it will find themselves left behind in 4 or 5 years. And expectations from people, why isn't this ready yet? Another organisation can do it a lot faster. It'll be expected of people. For a lot of people, it reduces monotonous tasks. And for that example, I'd probably say most of the AI applications we have are for transcription. In the old days, someone would take notes, they would read through it. A lot of the new AI applications will do it all for them. It'll take someone's voice, highlight the main points, and it can save hours and hours of time, staff time, which was often taking up a lot of their working week. And it can operate 24/7. By this, I'm thinking about what are called chatbots, who basically you log on and they'll give you some advice as what the old knowledge-based systems used to do. We are mindful of the risks. So next slide, please. So one of the major ones probably is inaccuracy. I've used the West Midlands Police as an example. As you probably read the news where the Chief Constable said we did not use AI to decide whether that match should go ahead. And it transpires that they did, and the AI was wrong. I put that down to laziness. They just perhaps put it through a system, saw that and didn't bother double checking it. When I use Google these days, which operates on AI, if it says something about Data Protection Act or something else, they'll give me a first answer, but I will always make sure it's verified. And we advise staff as well, make sure it's verified. Don't depend on it. Down that road leads pain. Unlawful processing of personal data, probably my biggest concern. A lot of AI applications learn as they go. And as you enter information, it will picking up personal data, information, learning about it more and more. That is processing your personal data. We have to tell people. We have to make sure it's okay. We have to make sure there's a lawful basis to do that. These all have to be checked. We have legal risks as well, copyright, that's always a problem. I've also included over-reliance. If it goes down, would we be able to cope with it if it's a long-term problem, or if a system decided at a later date an issue arises, we can't use this anymore, will this have a big impact on the local authority? All these are covered in data protection impact assessments, which I'll talk about later. Potential reputational risks if it goes wrong. Newspaper stories do like AI failing. And it does get a lot of media attention. And we also have the ethical questions, should we be using AI? Is it right to do this? Is it being over-intrusive? A problem we have to monitor quite a lot as well is scope creep. I'll ask for something and we find out perhaps just a few weeks later, you're using something else. You didn't say this, you've changed the purpose, you've changed what you're using it for, you're changing the level of data. That's when pretty much we do stop this right now. We need to go back to the drawing board and find out what's going on. That has not yet happened to a great extent, thankfully. We are quite strict on that, especially some directorates are extremely strict. And the impacts on individuals. Partly, if it's running someone's life or making some decisions about people, they do have rights. Staff may be suspicious about it taking their jobs. I think I've heard 1 or 2 doom-monger stories saying 2050 we'll all be on the beach while AI does everything for us. But at the moment, I've not seen any of that yet, thankfully. With all these things in mind, we have mitigated against this. New or modified applications which use AI, and they are starting to pour in now. It's becoming more and more widespread. To date, there's been 20 risk assessments for an AI application. And there's probably going to be, I could come this time next year and it'll be double or treble that. They're all risk assessed, but from our policy, everything must have human intervention. We can't have it just making decisions. Just no computer says no. It has to have someone overseeing it. The example I use probably is Copilot, and the name is Copilot. It's not the pilot. It's just there to help. It's there to streamline. It's there to assist. So for the data processing, all AI applications have a data protection impact assessment. We have to do that by law if it's processing personal data. And we do an information security risk assessment, which looks at the IT risks on the other side of that. We're using that for every application. And even I was doing one yesterday, which was processing no personal data, but it was just helping schedule work. We still did a risk assessment for it. So, and they're all signed off by the Chief Digital Information Officer, myself. They go to legal as well as the IT people and the person who overseeing the project. We're also advising people for transparency through our fair processing notices, and there's a message on the website in general saying we are using AI now. The Artificial Intelligence Policy and Procedure, where it's been about a year old now, perhaps a little bit longer. We ask staff in many occasions, you must read this before we're going to grant you this application. This policy echoes everything I've said so far and other things as well. It's very comprehensive. We have to have justification for it. We have to make sure there's a proper audit trail. We have to make sure that people are clear what they want to use it for, where the AI fits into this. We've just been recently audited on the how we're dealing with AI requests and applications. We've had substantial assurance, but we're still learning. It's still quite in its infancy at the moment. So we are mindful of what might happen in the future. And we also have training for some applications as well. And there's a council-wide Copilot training provided already with future sessions in the forthcoming as well, probably in February and March for other staff. And some staff are actually going on apprenticeships as well for it. So it's growing a lot. And there's a lot of potential benefits, but we are very, very mindful of the risks. But given all the mitigations we have assessed it as an potential IT risk. It's not scored overly high on the risk register at the moment, but it is being used responsibly at the moment. Issues have been quite few and far between, but we're not going to rest on our laurels on that score. We will carry on being vigilant. Next slide, please. So to conclude, like practically every other public body, we're using AI now. It's here. I think if we'd have said we can't use it, there would have been a lot of applications we'd have to have just blocked or stopped. So it would have been a big disruption to business. We have got a lot of steps in place to make sure that it's used responsibly for new and existing applications where it suddenly gets crept in. And there are full risk assessments, and we're monitoring the outputs, but it is still under a lot of development. But it's getting more and more accepted now. It's getting more and more widespread. So it's here and we're taking advantage of it, but we're not going to take it for granted that it's all okay. We are very vigilant at the moment. We have to stay that way. Well, definitely will stay that way. Any questions?
Amon, thank you very much for that presentation, and I'm really, really impressed because being a total IT Luddite, AI has always been of a great concern to me, and especially as a councillor, because I was always afraid that AI will take totally over and it takes away the human input. So for instance, if you're going onto the telephone and our residents are our bread and butter, and you have an AI bot and there's something that doesn't fit the criteria, you're stuck and you're starting all over. And we all know AI has already been causing a lot of trouble, and it's only as good as the input. So I really was impressed with your presentation, and long may you reign, but I've got some questions. So you're talking about monitoring it. So how, and I assume the question is, what are you monitoring? Are you monitoring the input of the policy or the outcomes, or, you know, the customer satisfaction, etc., etc.? That's my first question. Then, whilst I appreciate you're looking constantly at training and risks, etc., but I know, I've been around for a long time. I know, for instance, 25 years ago, every member of staff had a member officer training. So it didn't make any difference whether you were a cleaner or a chief executive. You had training of the district, the roles of a member, and then it got thrown out with the bathwater over the years. So whilst you're saying every member is supposed to be trained, but will that continue? Will that go right down to the service telephone operator part-time? Because I think it is important that everybody knows. And I like the idea of a co-pilot. However, so say even with a co-pilot in huge organizations, something can be inputted wrongly, and then it says, but it's Google, it's AI, that's true, you know? So what in the policy is there to give the third party an opportunity to change it? So if you are putting out any kind of information about me, for example, that isn't true, but by then it has taken on legs, well, there's got to be a process to look at it and for the third party to challenge it, because I'm worried that sometimes AI takes on legs and then, you know, that's it. So anyway, if you can answer that for me, thank you, and good luck with that. I think it's a brilliant.
Thank you. First question, the risk assessments are all living documents. Data protection impact assessment does not get closed. It gets signed off so we can start processing the data, but if an issue arises, and same goes for information security assessment, that will carry on. But if an issue arises, it can still be reviewed, monitored. Is this a new risk? Is this a problem? So then we can be shut down accordingly. The training issue, lots of staff in Leicestershire County Council won't touch AI. Field staff, perhaps school foods, they won't be looking at AI applications at all. Nevertheless, we have included a module for artificial intelligence in the GDPR training, which is mandatory for all staff. Regarding hallucination, there are protections in place for people if their data is being processed incorrectly. There's a right to rectification. Unfortunately, you raise a good point. If Google gets it, it is hard to stop it when it gets to that level. But the thing is to catch it very, very early. But probably from the feedback of the training, the AI element is probably the most popular element of the training at the moment because it's new and people want to learn more and more about it. But we have a comfort that all staff know about it. But you're right, we don't allow it to make decisions for the reason being it can be wrong. To do it solely on itself, that's it. There has to be some human oversight. One thing we have to be careful of as well is that people don't get lazy. Just say, I've got no time to do this. I'll just chuck all this through this system and get that done and do something I prefer to do. Most of the larger applications that use AI have a lessons learned. There's a follow-up meetings about it. Is it working? Is it doing what we're supposed to do? At the risk now of sounding slightly controversial, we know when some applications have gone out as well, people have asked for them, don't use them. So some people are still just depend on their own judgment and not using the AI so much. bit disappointing, but they're in a minority at the moment. But we are trying to gauge why you're not using it. This could make your life easier, but it does require a lot of monitoring. But individuals do have their rights. They do have the right to rectification as GDPR. We do have quite a lot of those requests anyway. But so far, nothing has manifested from AI. It's normally we just disagree with what's on their file. So it's quite a lengthy process. But I dare say training will develop as well.
Okay, all noted, understood. But it's still kind of worrying going forward, and I think it's a huge learning curve. So has ever a thought been given to a simple person like me who's not very good at IT, but I know when somebody sends me a letter that I can see whether it's written on AI because, straight, but if I then feel that that isn't, correct or whatever, come back, what is there? I can follow, and I don't actually know what I'm saying here. So I'm a person who likes to work by a flow chart. So if I think there is something wrong, so is there a way we can look at first of all, approach A, then go over B, then follow the process. So and we have got a very aging population in Leicestershire. So, they all won't be able to, but to give them a kind of way to follow a simple process if they have some questions, if they feel there's something wrong in the decision, especially say, you said school meals, but what happens if you are in adult social care or something like that, and you are an elderly person and you think, this, what I'm saying. Thank you.
This goes back to human oversight. I would be very concerned if we were spitting out letters which just had AI input, not human input. People, if they disagree with things, take my word for it, they are not shy. From the subject access requests I receive, they will complain if they can, and often quite rightly, if they challenge the information or want to contest anything. There's always, to the complaint procedure, which can be cumbersome, but generally I'd expect the department to have common sense in these situations, and if something is glaring at people, which is incorrect, then they would rectify it straight away. As someone who deals with information rights requests, I am finding a lot of people now are using them to challenge. So I'm actually fighting AI letters at least 2 or 3 times a week now. I'm saying the law says this, and I'm having to point them back, saying actually this is being misinterpreted. The law actually says this instead, this section here. So it's a moving feast really. But yeah. At the same time, people can challenge an AI decision. They could also challenge a human decision, and they do. It's like I say, it's very much in its infancy. We are taking baby steps on this. We're not just jumping into it straight away. But it does take, the risk assessment process is quite drawn out. But I hope that answers your question.
Gary.
Just a quick one on training. What percentage of our employees have completed the AI training, and how many are left to do it?
The GDPR training came out September last year. We currently have 71% of people who've completed it. It's going up quite fast because the system reminds people and it annoys people saying your training is not complete. Please complete your training. And when it was manual, in the previous training, it was quite cumbersome to remind people. It's shooting up now. I expect it to be 90% plus by the spring, 95% definitely probably by the summer. So no one can plead ignorance on this. What we want to do as well a little bit is to make sure everyone's read the policy. So whether we need some specific AI training, that's a discussion for a later date probably, or probably an earlier date.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yeah.
It's not a question, Chair. It's just to try and provide a little bit more assurance on what Colin's presentation provided there. So he did mention in passing that it's been subject to one of my internal audit team has done an audit of the governance arrangements, and that came out very positive, which is really pleasing. I think what you'll see now is as we're moving down the line, Colin mentioned the number of applications, 20, then it's going to rise by 20, 30, 40, 50. So where my internal audit team will be focusing now is looking at the applications themselves, or a selection of the applications, and trying to ensure that those decisions that are made has had human intervention and has followed the correct track through. So just trying to provide that assurance we go forward now.
Okay, so, yeah, Joe.
Chair, thank you very much for the presentation. A couple of things. Chatbots. I think Derby City have a really good chatbot. I call it chatbot, but an AI system. And so my question is, are we looking out there what other councils are doing or other authorities are doing that are similar to us for learning more than anything? And the other thing was about reduced costs. You said that at the beginning. Have we quantified how much we've reduced costs by and what the savings are? And ultimately, do you think we've reduced roles in respect of having AI? Thank you.
We have spoken to a lot of local authorities who were ahead of the game on the chatbots. I think we're at least in development on some, but we've not rushed into it too much, because what we don't really want is something to go out and it fails, because it was quite rigorously tested, and when it was tested there were errors. So we're on the cusp now of releasing something anyway. There's an IT chatbot which does assist people with IT queries, but there's one going to general public quite soon, which we're currently in the process of risk assessing. It's nearly through the completed now. Regarding savings, in the main, Copilot, it was hard to quantify anyway. It will just help someone deal with their day-to-day tasks better. We'd hope that would deliver some efficiency savings. I've not yet known someone who's lost their job because of Copilot. However, when a larger application comes along, they would need a business case really, so because AI does have a cost. So it's for the decision makers when a large system gets put into place. What's this going to save us? What service is going to improve? Will this eventually mean classifying staff, etc.? But regarding quantification, I would hope in the first instance it would just show more efficient working and better productivity. Perhaps in the near future, we could say have people relocated or people using their time a little bit better. But apart from the individual applications, I wouldn't know what costs have been saved. But it's something to keep a watching brief on.
Thank you. If there are no more questions from anybody, thank you very much for that presentation. I think, as you say, it's exciting, but it's also quite scary. There's an awful lot of people well, not an awful lot of people, but there's some very, very high-profile people who are now not in jobs because of heavy reliance on AI. So that'll be a warning for us all. Thank you very much. We'll move on then to the next item. I think this one's another Neil report. So you.
Yeah, do we need to make the recommendations for?
I thought no, we voted on the recommendation.
Oh, oh, sorry.
Yes, we've done that. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, next report. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Apologies to members. This is not going to be as exciting as the previous presentation on this paper. So this report explains that since April 2025, my internal audit team has been working to revise internal audit standards. They're actually global standards, but with adaptations for the UK public sector and then specific local government requirements. There are 3 key governance documents required to meet conformance to the standards. The first of those governance documents was brought to the committee in November 2025. That was the Internal Audit Charter. So that leaves a remainder for 2 other documents now, and they are the subject of today's report. So the first one is a rather long title of the Code of Practice for the Governance of Internal Audit in Local Government, and I'll just refer to that simply as a code today. So paragraphs 4 to 10, I think, or 4 to 9 cover that. It's a new requirement, and the code has been created by the accounting body SIPFA to satisfy what are known as essential conditions in the global standards. But what they do is reflect what's different and what's required in local government. So paragraph 6 explains the code has three main provisions. And again, these are traditional, really, providing the service with authority, positioning it independently so that I can provide an independent and objective reports, and then ensuring there is adequate oversight, including the role of this committee. So paragraph 7 and 8 explain that I've undertaken a self-assessment against the code, and that's been reviewed by management. The full self-assessment is found in the appendix, and that starts on page 107. Overall, I've concluded that good compliance is there, but with some improvements required, which are graded between independent and minor. So they're covered in paragraphs, below on the page, top of page 103. And the time frame for implementing these recommendations is quite short, as we'll need to disclose the level of conformance to the code in both my annual report and the draft annual governance statement, and both of those are scheduled to be reported to this committee at the end of June. So the next second document, governance document, again is another new document, and this is for an internal audit strategy. It's a new requirement from the standards, and it's explained in paragraphs 10 to 13 in appendix 2, starting on page 123. Just to say that being a new requirement, I found a useful Institute of Internal Auditors toolkit to use that and devise a strategy, and that strategy has been reviewed by senior management. So the draft strategy itself, given uncertainty with local government reorganisation, I've kept it to a fairly shorter period of 2 years, and that will be reviewed and revised at the point of key changes. The final thing I've got to say on the paper, I think, Chair, is to say that both of these documents, the code and the strategy, remain work in progress. So I am seeking a delegation for minor changes outside of this meeting, and then before they are formally reported again. That concludes my report, Chair. I'll take any questions.
Yeah, and that's great. Thank you very much. Any questions or comments on that? Have an easy time today, Neil. So I'll move the report with what you say about the delegation issues. Jill, seconded. Those in favour? Any against? Again, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. So now we are moving on to contract procedure rules, if I've got right. That's Kate to make a presentation when she's ready. Thank you, Kate.
Morning, Chair. Good morning, all. The contract procedure rules, in January 2025, we brought those to Corporate Governance Committee, and we received approval from both yourselves and the full council for the application of procurements under the Procurement Act. The government has since amended the procurement thresholds to adjust to inflation. So we've amended in line with that latest guidance, including thresholds to be including VAT. Further changes have been applied to the rules, which are outlined in point 5 of the paper. Basically, these changes just reflect the council's experiences from the last year and are basically improvements to the operational efficiency of how those rules work. So I'm here today to request approval to the updated rules.
Thank you, Kate. I guess they are fairly minor changes. Yeah.
I've got a question, and I'm the first time I've been on this committee, so bear with me. So whilst I read the report, and I know it is all set in law and, you know, it has all got a very solid basis, but I can't get my head around something, and I hope you can explain it to me. So say, for instance, for example, the county council undertakes some serious roadworks. They come across a problem and, I don't know, they need a drill or something that is very specialised. However, there is only one company that could provide that. But yet the rules say you have to have several tenders and whatever. So you would then get a delay, which could occur as some financial cost. So if I was, I don't know, the project manager, how would I go about it to get this moved on in order to not have a very long time delay? Or, for instance, if it says, you know, you have to get a quote for anything over £5,000, yet that drill costs £5,050. So is there a little bit of wriggle room that scheme wouldn't be delayed because of this procurement rules, which seem to be set in stone? So how is that wriggle room reflected in case of an emergency or eventuality like that, that it wouldn't delay £1 million scheme, not only by time, but incurring extra cost? Thank you.
It's okay, thank you. Within the rules, under Rule 21, we have the ability to direct award to any provider, and listed within that rule are a set of circumstances. Both of those circumstances that you just mentioned are within that rule. So in case of emergency, to protect life or to protect whatever we're doing, also for the scenario where there is a single supplier and it's a proprietary item that you can't buy from anywhere else. We have to justify it though. So we would still fill in the necessary forms and governance papers to get that approval, but direct awards are allowed to circumvent those kind of circumstances. It's okay.
Anybody else? No? Okay, so recommendation is that we endorse the revised rules. So I recommend their approval by the County Council. I'm happy to move. Is there a second? Yeah, I agreed. Oh, sorry, you just voted, Mr. Barber. Yeah.
No, I second it.
Yes, Mr. Thank you very much. Those in favour? Any against? No, that is again unanimously carried. Thank you very much. And we move on to item 13 now. So changes to the Council's Modern Slavery document. And okay, again.
Okay, thank you. So the modern slavery statement outlines how the council works to prevent modern slavery within its supply chains and how we'll respond to any concerns that we come across. The statement's been updated essentially to reflect new terminology within the Procurement Act and the procurement regulations. The risk assessment criteria now aligns with the updated characteristics and factors for identifying modern slavery risks, and the enhanced due diligence measures shift from a single check to a more proportionate risk-based approach, with better use of existing exclusion grounds if a supplier has been subject to any modern slavery. So I'm here today to request approval of the revised statement.
Thank you, Chair. I presume this is, like the previous item, it's more just an updating of it than any substantial change. So, yeah, thank you very much.
Yes, that's correct, yeah.
Yeah, and I guess if anybody's in any doubt that we still need these sort of policies, listen to the terrible cases that I heard on the news from somewhere in the West Midlands where somebody's been kept as a slave for 25 years, 20 odd years. It's terrible. How she was, yeah, how she was treated. Sentencing hearing for that in March, I understand. So, again, any further questions? Happy to move the report. And is that seconded? Mr. Piper again. Those in favour? Any against? No. And so we move on to the final report. We're doing brilliantly today. So the whistleblowing report, and I think it's Fiona that's going to present that one for us. Thank you very much, Kate.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. I'd like to present the whistleblowing report for the 2025 calendar year and introduce a small set of important refinements to the policy. I'm going to start by giving you a brief reminder of the framework that we operate. Our Employees Code of Conduct, which applies to council employees and agency workers, explicitly signposts a whistleblowing route, and it designates the Director of Law and Governance and the Director of Corporate Resources as the officers to whom concerns may be raised where it is not practical to go through line management. Whistleblowing remains a protected disclosure under the Employment Rights Act 1996, as amended by the Public Interest Disclosure Act 1998, and it covers matters such as criminal offences, breaches of legal obligations, miscarriages of justice, health and safety, environmental damage, and deliberate concealment of wrongdoing. We are not legally required to have a policy, but it is accepted good practice and an integral part of our risk management and insurance environment. So turning to activity over the last calendar year, 2 referrals met the whistleblowing criteria in 2025. The first reference 0125 was within ESPO and alleged financial irregularities. We commissioned a full internal audit and no evidence of impropriety was found and the case was therefore closed. The second reference 0225, which was in the corporate resources area, alleged the systematic taking of food court items without payment. The fact-finding process, including a CCTV review, did not substantiate the allegation, but responsibilities were reaffirmed with staff and no further action was deemed required. Other matters raised under the whistleblowing banner were more appropriately addressed through management or HR routes or were signposted to the right organisation. So we've made a series of minor but important updates to the whistleblowing policy itself, reflected in Appendix A, to keep it current and robust. First, we have added an explicit reference to the Economic Crime and Corporate Transparency Act 2023 and the new Failure to Prevent Fraud offence that came into effect in September last year. This makes clear that fraud-related concerns fall within scope and explains how whistleblowing intelligence interlocks with our fraud prevention procedures. Secondly, we have strengthened the wording on non-retaliation, so no worker should suffer any detriment for making a protected disclosure. Co-worker detriment, including harassment or intimidation, will be treated as misconduct, and we make clear that non-disclosure agreements do not prevent protected disclosures under the Public Interest Disclosure Act. Thirdly, we've refreshed our designated officer contact details and we've improved the quick reference guidance for regular routes, particularly in relation to safeguarding and health and social care, whilst updating the link to the gov.uk prescribed persons list following the amendments published on the 26th of November in 2025. And finally, we've added a dedicated privacy notice for whistleblowing case handling, setting out the lawful basis, confidentiality expectations, information sharing, retention, and the extent to which we can provide feedback, which is all aligned to the ICO guidance and our commitment to handle cases both fairly and discreetly. Promotion and awareness of the policy remains central. We promote the policy on the intranet and through the Manager's Digest roughly twice a year, and we maintain posters across 170 notice boards and county council buildings, so colleagues without routine intranet access still see the routes to raise a concern. The policy is covered in mandatory corporate induction and fraud awareness e-learning, and during International Fraud Awareness Week in November last year, we ran targeted reminders via the intranet, IT bulletins, and Viva Engage. We also continue to signpost staff to protect the independent whistleblowing charity for confidential advice. So in terms of outcomes and learning, whilst neither of the 2 cases last year were substantiated, in each instance we used the opportunity to reinforce expectations with staff and consider whether any control or communication enhancements would reduce a recurrence risk. Where an allegation indicates potential fraud, we assess the need for police referral under our anti-fraud policies, and no such referral was warranted this year. We will also wish to be assured about governance and effectiveness. Consistent with the CIPFA Code of Practice on managing the risk of fraud and corruption, we reviewed the effectiveness of our whistleblowing arrangements in August 2024 and made minor arrangements. Going forward, we intend to maintain an annual review and report to this committee, so members will have regular visibility of performance, learning and any further improvements. So the recommendation is that the committee notes the report and the proposed annual reporting cycle to maintain assurance over the effectiveness of these arrangements. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Fiona. Are there any questions on this? So, excellent. Well, that is the end of that. If I'll move the report formally and seconded by Jill. Yeah, all in favour? Any against? No, well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for giving me an easy time today. So the date of the next meeting is the 27th of March. Have a good weekend, everybody. Thank you.